This morning, I randomly started reading The Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. Well, this is not just the Book of Five Rings, it also has uh, it has another basically a famous Ronin, a famous samurai. He also has an excerpt in this book, and something really caught my eye. Now, I have read Vagabond. You can see Miyamoto Musashi there on my. It's essentially a blind, like behind this blind, there's a huge ass window, and I designed it myself, by the way. I have read Vagabond back in 2022, and of course, I loved Vagabond. I loved how Miyamoto Musashi is portrayed in that. And I bought this sometime in 2024, and I haven't really gotten myself to read it because, well, for I don't know. It's like, you order something and then you just don't read it for some fucking reason. The time I ordered this was actually when I was doing boxing and I wanted to learn Miyamoto Musashi's principles on war back then to use in the boxing. But then I went through a serious wrist injury and I had to quit boxing. It's a long fucking story. Anyways, this morning I randomly got the urge to read this, and things happen in a mysterious way. You can't really put some sense or logic into everything. I was going to take a shit, and I guess I was just bored because I'm so addicted to dopamine, and I wanted to take my phone, but I was like, you know what, let's do something good. Instead of taking my phone and doom scrolling while taking a shit, why not take the Book of Five Rings? And I read the preface, pretty much. And something really caught my eye in this preface. By towards the end of it, before the actual scrolls start, if you have read the Book of Five Rings, it's about five scrolls: the Earth Scroll, the Sky Scroll, scrolls like that. And in the last few paragraphs of this preface, Miyamoto Musashi is essentially explaining that, what is his name, where he comes from, when did he start dueling, when was the last time he dueled, and when is he writing this book exactly. And he writes that he started writing this book when he was, no, he got into military science by the age of 50. And he writes this, I'm going to just read it word for word. Since then, I have passed the time with no science into which to inquire, trusting in the advantage, trusting, trusting in the advantage of military science as I turn it into the sciences of all arts and skills. I have no teacher in anything. Pretty much what he's saying is, he is using his understanding and skill of military science, essentially the art of war, and translating into every single skill and aspect of life. And he writes something really powerful. I have no teacher in anything. I'll talk about this for a second. There's another important paragraph I want to read, but essentially in the modern day, everything is passed down. You learn to stand on the shoulders of giants, if you have heard that saying, standing on the shoulder of giants when it comes to science, maths, any sort of skill, even fighting. You learn to stand on the shoulder of giants. You take knowledge and wisdom from someone who has done it before you. You make that your baseline, and then you develop further on it, and then one day you pass down that knowledge to a disciple of yours. That is essentially how it happens. Even in the matters of spiritual prowess, when it comes to enlightenment, every single religion, every single culture on the planet relies on having skipped scriptures and then passing down that knowledge to the people. And in fact, in many religions and many cultures, questioning it is not allowed. You have to take everything at face value as one size fits all. And that is something very logical because you save a lot of time when you pick up fundamentals and basics from someone else. And even though it does save time, what I often think about is fulfillment. Like, just imagine two scenarios. You pick up a skill and in one you go through the regular route of learning from someone who is an expert in that field, consuming his knowledge, his perspective on that art, and then adding your own along the way, and then you eventually become a master. Compare that to the way Miyamoto Musashi learned the art of the sword, like the way of the sword. If you have read Vagabond, you pretty much his origin backstory is he's a young kid. He doesn't have a mother. He's in a single father household. His father is a bit of an asshole. He's too strict. He's too hard. I think he killed his mother maybe. I don't remember the exact origin story, but essentially he hates his father. He hates his town. He hates living in his home. And so almost every day he just runs into the mountains and just stays a couple days there. He has a cave, and in that cave is a rotting corpse, like a skeleton, a cadaver of a samurai, and his sword is next to him. And so every day he goes into that cave, he picks up that sword from the dead samurai, goes into the lake, near the rivers, into the forest, just doing whatever, fuck all. And then at the end of the day, he comes back to the cave, returns back that sword, and just, I don't know, eats birds and rats, whatever he can find. And essentially, Miyamoto Musashi learned the way of the sword without a master, without a training regiment. Just he, the sword under the heaven, in the wilderness. That's how he learned it. And there is a very strange appeal to that. Like, I totally get, for example, I started boxing. Obviously, I went into a boxing academy. They taught me how to stay in stance. They taught me how to move backward and forward. They taught me how to shift weight. And similarly, in religious and spiritual matters, like, sure, it probably is the most optimum way, just reading the scriptures and being under a mentor, and they basically guide you into enlightenment or how to spiritually elevate yourself. But there is again a really attractive proposal, a really attractive way of becoming enlightened, and that is just by yourself, looking inside your own self, being there with yourself, interacting with the world without any distractions, and eventually the truth, the reality of the universe, it unfolds itself onto you. I'll just read the second paragraph that I was talking about so you understand this point a bit better. Miyamoto Musashi writes, "Now in composing this book, I have not borrowed the old sayings of Buddhism or Confucianism, nor do I make use of old stories from military records or books on military science. With heaven and canon for mirrors, I take up the brush and begin to write at 4 a.m. on the night of the 10th day of the 10th month, 1643. Essentially, Miyamoto Musashi shuts out any sort of external knowledge chain, any lineage of knowledge, the knowledge you find in books, the stories you find in scriptures, the religious morals, religious, sciences. He rejects all of that, and he writes, with the heaven and canon as my mirror. I don't know what canon means. In fact, I'll just ask Gemini about what canon means. And by the way, I totally understand. I'm just searching up what canon means so I can understand this better. I totally understand the irony of you and me pretty much reading from a book about Miyamoto Musashi and thinking about his sayings and stuff. We are obviously not as cool and not as self-sufficient as Miyamoto Musashi was. Old Sengoku period literature of Japan and Miyamoto Musashi. Yeah, I'll just search that. I understand the irony of the idolizing Miyamoto Musashi and trying to learn from his teachings, and him writing a book even though he never read a book or had a master. I understand the irony, but I guess some people just are born that talented, and I believe it's the right of everyone on earth to be that cool, to have that much aura. And if I don't have that much aura naturally, I'll just reproduce it artificially. I'm ready to kind of, stay bored, be away from dopamine, be stuck with my own thoughts and my own world without any simulation of some sort, to achieve that level of enlightenment, of self-enlightenment, and basically self-sufficiency. I guess that is what you will say for to explain that. And Miyamoto Musashi was notorious for being an antisocial element. Like, he didn't comb his hair, he let it grow all out. He didn't take a bath. I don't know. He was an antisocial element through and through. In fact, in this book, we are told the perspective on war from two different personalities. The first is Miyamoto Musashi, who is all about being antisocial, being only true to yourself, being only listening to your own self. And the second one is, I forget his name, just give me a second. Yagyu Munenori. And on the other hand, Yagyu Munenori is a proper shogun, like a proper aristocrat. He is hired officially by the Tokugawa estate, and he is the top ranking official there, and he has a whole school of teaching, and he enjoys a luxurious and full social life. He has a social standing, he's in a hierarchy, everything like that. I'll eventually get to that point as well, and I'll just explain what canon means. Much is the embodiment of compassionate action. Bodhisattva and Senbogura canon is often depicted as Senju canon, a 1,000-armed cannon for a samurai. It was a myth for peak performance. The concept of no mind, to have 1,000 arms and manage 1,000 women cannot think about. Okay. Total awareness, mirrored in martial art of Zanshin. Canon, Book of Five Rings, canon body, the body of a rock, to him carried perfect. Okay. So canon, K-A-N-N-O-N, which Miyamoto Musashi writes as, when he says, with the heavens and canon as my mirror. Pretty much canon is kind of like a philosophy where imagine you have 1,000 arms and 1,000 weapons in each arms. You have to learn to move without thinking, like the concept of no mind or nushin. And you have to be totally aware, because if you really start thinking, you can only think of one weapon and one movement at a time, and then the other 999 movements are entirely wasted. And especially in Musashi's philosophy, he talks about canon as the perfect balance between fluidity and immovability. In fact, this is so cold. Miyamoto Musashi on detachment, he says, Miyamoto Musashi's famous phrase, respect the gods and Buddhas, but do not rely on them, encapsulates his view. He viewed canon as a psychological archetype to emulate a state of being where your spirit is as vast as the ocean, unperturbed by the chaos of a duel. You essentially get the point. Basically, a very delicate balance between being as fluid as water and as immovable as the stone. And I especially love this. Like, this has been my take on spirituality for the longest time. Respect the gods and Buddhas, but do not rely on them. Do not rely on luck or astrology and all that thing. That's some of my personal opinions. I will probably talk on them more as we go through this series, and you get my point. I am deeply fascinated by Miyamoto Musashi's philosophy on life, and ironically, the greatest thing I can do to follow Miyamoto Musashi's philosophy is make up my own, not to blindly follow steps of some has-been Ronin. Like, Miyamoto Musashi died, around 380 years ago? Not blindly following his philosophy of in everyday, like in war of everyday life and everything, but actually come up with my own, which is fascinating but also hard at the same time, because to rely on your own self, to rely on your individuality, you have to be okay with the possibility of failure. You have to be okay with going 10 miles in the wrong direction, then having to take a U-turn, compared to the safe, tried and tested path of joining a lineage of warrior, joining a school of sword mastery, let's say, and they can teach you everything. But in that safe and tried and tested way, you lose the individuality, you lose the spiritual potential of your unique self. Like, you are entirely unique. There will be nobody who is same as you. There will be no one who is Miyamoto Musashi. Similarly, there is no one who will be Rehan, who will be born the same way, who will go through the same life experiences, who will make up the same opinions, who will learn to love something, who will learn to hate something. There will never be another me, just like there will be never another you. Pretty much, I don't have much to say as of now. I have to contemplate more on it. But this is essentially a series where I will cover this book, give my own opinions on it, and ask you to form your own opinions on it. And like I said, I'm almost in love with this fantasy of becoming the best in the world, becoming a master at something on my own, without external guidance, without external principles, without external support. Just me and the craft under the heavens, as Miyamoto Musashi would say. That is my goal for now. And to realize that obviously I have to be on a dopamine detox. I cannot bother myself with useless shit like random scrolling on YouTube or just frying my brain with some useless shit. I have to focus on my work, like on my actual job that earns me money, because there is no survival without that. I'm guessing Musashi didn't do a job. He just lived in the fucking mountains, and then whenever he had a duel, he had a duel. I learned more about him through this book, obviously. But as far as vagabond goes, he is a fucking vagabond. He doesn't have a job. Except in modern day, you can be a vagabond and have a job. You can shift places, you can shift homes and still have a job, thanks to the internet, thanks to online businesses. And I'm actually trying to grow my own online business. I am a freelancer as of now, and I'm trying to grow it into an agency. But yeah, this is just going to be a series where I talk about myself and my journey on becoming like Miyamoto Musashi, in the sense of not mirroring him, but understanding his philosophy and then giving birth to my own philosophy, to my own moral code of conduct through that. And hopefully, if you're someone who is passionate about this, who is someone who has clicked on this video, you can do the fucking same and come up with your own shit. Like, don't be a fucking blind sheep and follow the shepherd, even though that is blasphemy according to some religions. Do not follow the shepherd. Do not be the sheep. Just be a unique soul who has been given a chance to experience himself, to experience the universe in his own unique way. And just come up with things you love, things you hate, things you want to do till you die, and things you'll never want to do. And that is about it. Stick around if you want to follow through the series. But yeah, in general, I would recommend just get off of YouTube, do your own fucking thing. Do not consume, become a creator. That is about it, yeah.